So, welcome to episode, what is this, 6? Episode
5, 6? Something like that.
Of the Elite Training for Basketball podcast, live inside the Facebook group, Elite Training for Basketball. Not to be confused with some other groups that have very similar names. As always, Sean Sinisi is here with me from Austin, Texas. Welcome.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I know in this Facebook group, their majority of the group is outside of the U.S., but today it's a special day here in the United States. It is our election day. Oh, so glad it is over after this, Sean. Aren't you?
Yeah, thankfully.
Gosh, yeah. So there's a lot of good memes going around, but basically, if your guy wins, don't gloat about it. If your guy loses, life goes on. Tomorrow, I'm still going to wake up, still going to go to work, still going to do the same thing. So, but what I love about it is that, in all of the public spaces about talking about equality, man, talk about equality, man, woman, black, white, every nationality, like everybody has one vote. Use it.
Yep.
Love it. Love it. Sean, what's your workouts like lately?
Oh, man, sticking with my Olympic lifts. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I do Olympic lifts. So cleans, jerks, snatches, lots of squats, lots of heavy pulls. Tuesday, Thursday right now are my auxiliary days. So Tuesday turns into like a bodybuilding day. So I kind of work on growing particular body parts, make me look a little more aesthetic, I guess.
Yeah.
And then Thursday gets to be my conditioning circuit and core day. So I get heavy weights Monday, Wednesday, Friday with explosiveness. And then Tuesday is a little bit more bodybuilding, volume, muscle development. And then Thursday is more conditioning and body fat burning.
Sweet. And this is still running through the coach that you're working with?
So the coach that I work with, he programs my Olympic training. So my cleans and jerks and snatches.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of decide I'll make myself a little program for my Tuesday, Thursday workouts.
Cool. Love it. Love hearing it. I actually just finished my workout. That's why I'm kind of like fixing my hair. I got the sweaty going and just back to the house. Still going with mine. I have essentially a 2-week split, if you want to call it that way. I have an A week and a B week.
That's cool.
And it resets. So I'm on the B week of the second cycle. So I'm 4 weeks in. I did have to take 2 weeks off between moving from Austin, Texas to here in South Carolina. And so this week is my first really full week back. And it's been awesome. I showed you that, I sent you the video earlier. I feel like I should take 2 weeks off more often. My lifts are cleaner and smoother and faster. And
everything kind of connects when it's been left dormant for a minute and you come back and you're like, oh, okay, that feels pretty good.
Yeah, totally. Well, let's go into it. We're talking today about in-season training. And the reason I want to talk about this is because I have had conversations with a few guys. I've had messages from a few people, and in every one, we've talked about in-season training. I'm thinking back this summer to the player that I coached in the weight room from the Danish national team, and we were working through off season, and then he told me, before training with me this past summer, that typically during the season he goes 8, 10, 12 reps in his sets, but that makes him too sore, so then he can't perform at his peak.
Wow.
And
it's high reps.
Yeah, and it's a lot of reps. And in my brain, I'm thinking, okay, you've worked, from here to here to here in the off season. Why then bring your reps all the way back down? And so there's a lot of problems. There's a lot of issues. There's a lot of things on the internet, good, bad information. So we're just going to try to demystify it a little bit in the next 20, 25 minutes, and then go from there. And hopefully there's some questions, hopefully that helps you in your training. So why do you need to train in season? This is a big one because, man, so many athletes, and I'm sure you know this, Sean, too, they go through the off season, and then the season comes along and they're boom, they besides training on the court or on the field, we're talking specific to basketball. So, besides their on-court training, they don't lift, they don't train at all. And this is extremely detrimental for you and your explosiveness and your power and your performance. Have you seen this, Sean, with a lot of your athletes?
Hopefully not the ones I can control, but it seems to be a commonality where people don't want to train during season because they're scared of, I don't know, they're scared of losing performance, where it's quite the inverse, like you said. And I know we'll get into a little bit more of, why it makes a big difference, but yeah, there is a misconception that training in season needs to stop so that you're, for whatever reason, maybe they think they're going to be fresher for their games, or they'll feel like they're reducing their chance of injury from training before games. I mean, we can talk about why that is less than ideal mindset, but yeah, it seems to be pretty common, and try and get a quick handle on that as fast as I can.
Yeah. Growing up, I remember it was a big deal that it was publicized that Michael Jordan trained on game days, and a lot of people thought he was wacky for doing it. This past year, now that The Last Dance came out, and I'm sure most of you people watching this video have seen The Last Dance, they referenced it again, how he really, near the end of his career, really started working out hard, even on game days. And so we're going to get into that, though. And so why do we need to train during the season? Biggest reason, well, I don't want to rank these reasons. There's a few reasons that we want to train. One of them is to keep all of the off-season gains that you got. It doesn't take as much training to maintain as it does to gain. So, you guys that are doing 4, 5, 6 days a week training, I talked to a guy just yesterday that, man, he was working out 5 days a week, as well as doing yoga 3 days a week, as well as doing his on-court stuff. So
in season?
No, off season.
Oh,
so
a
lot of work. He gained 13 pounds of muscle.
Nice.
He was more explosive, more fast. If that athlete does not keep working out throughout this season, those gains will be lost. And I mean, think about it in off season, in season, when you're younger, when you're older. If you don't continue to train, you will lose your abilities.
Don't use it, you'll lose it. That's
totally. So that's a huge reason. You want to maintain, you want to keep the gains that you have, and that you basically gained throughout the off season. The second thing is it actually reduces your in-season injuries. And the one example I want to share is a lot of athletes, basketball players, they go through the season, they develop this patellar tendonitis. It's that pain on the top of your kneecap. It's referenced and referred to as jumper's knee. A lot of basketball players, a lot of volleyball players get this. Any sport where you're jumping a lot, landing a lot. This is an overuse thing. It's an overuse injury. And what I found, there's a few things that can really eliminate and prevent that. One is full range of motion at the knee joint. Okay. And if you think about jumper's knee, when you go to squat, or when you go to jump to get a rebound, to dunk, to block a shot, whatever, you're not obviously squatting all the way down to the floor and all the way back up. And that's what a lot of people kind of cite as, well, we don't need to squat to the ground. We don't need to squat, all the way because you don't do it in the game. Those, what am I trying to say? Not full range of motion, partial range of motion movements, literally create that injury. That's one of the reasons that you create that injury. So doing full range of motion split squats, doing full range of motion back squats, front squats, these will help to prevent injury, specifically in the knee. And there's other host of ways that training helps to prevent injury, but that's just one. Sean, have you seen this? What have you seen with injury prevention in terms of training in season?
I'm a huge believer that strength is the first and foremost predictor of injuries. So if you're weak, you're more likely to get injured. There's plenty of research papers out there. It's about a 50% predictor, which is the highest predictor over sleep, over nutrition, over other, flexibility, other variables. Strength is the number one predictor of injury rates. So stronger athletes are less injured. I think what's important to consider with in-season training is exposure. So different kinds of exposure mean different things to your body. So for what we're saying, so if we are in season, we want to make sure we're maintaining our strength exposure and our speed exposure. So we're getting the central nervous system turned on, we're getting the motor units and the muscles activated, turned on maximally. For what we mentioned earlier was going to be for strength maintenance. and speed power maintenance. But at the same time, we want to make sure we're exposing ourselves to what might be commonly unstable positions or more injury prone positions, like you were mentioning. So the deeper ranges of motion, being exposed to those ranges of motion will help build resiliency in that exact movement or that range of motion. So I don't know if you guys heard of functional range conditioning, but there's a bunch of new types of mobility, flexibility that put you into a fully like squeezed position, and then you're getting mobility and stuff out of that. So translates a little bit more to that full range like we're talking about. So I'm a fan of both partial stuff and full range stuff in season. One thing I'm always trying to figure out is, am I optimizing or am I adapting? And so with the partial in, like, so say we're in season and I'm making a workout specific to a basketball player, I might include a lot of the partial ranges of motion to be more what some would consider sport specific. So the joint angles of a jump, we mimic the joint angles so that we're creating more speed and power off of that specific action. And then we also got to be specific to our landings and to our other vulnerable areas where now I'm getting a full range of motion to be specific with landing mechanics and other things like that. So I think there's room for both. We need to make sure we're optimizing our positions and creating power from our positions that we play in our sport. And so we're mimicking the movements and we're mimicking the angles and we're mimicking the movement speeds. But we also need to be maintaining our resiliency in unfavorable positions.
Yeah, I think that's some good points. And going back to the injury prevention, you mentioned strength is the greatest indicator.
That's right.
I always reference structural balance. If you've watched any of these episodes, you've heard me say it plenty of times. And when I see athletes for the first time, they always have imbalanced ratios. So we know like the quads and the hamstrings should be a certain ratio. Your lifts should be in certain ratios to other lifts. And so when these ratios are off, that's when imbalances occur. So to be even more specific, we need to strength train because we need to maintain that structural balance, not just overall strength like Sean's talking about, but also, hey, I came into the program in the off season with weak hamstrings. We corrected that. Your body tends to go back to those levels, those pre-workout levels. And so you don't want to lose that balance that you've maintained or that you've gained in the off season. Say you brought up your hamstring strength now and it's where it needs to be in relation to the quads. You need to maintain that to help to prevent injury. And then you mentioned one thing about, what did you say? Joints, something or other.
Maybe we're talking about maximizing or training at joint specific angles, like sport specific training. Was that what you're thinking of?
Yeah, well, where I was going was I'm really big on, and I'm not discounting what you said about there's a time and a place for partials, but those full ranges of motion will really help to keep your joints lubricated. Will really keep your joints loose. Sean, I know that saying came in your brain right there. What is it? Go ahead.
Motion is lotion.
Motion is lotion, and it's really important, and it's really true for your joints.
Well, the cool thing too with the full range of motion, so not only are we getting the joints lubricated, but certain length tension curves. So the length tension curve is what muscles are activated when it's pulled a certain length. And we know like glutes are more activated at a deeper range of motion. Say if we're doing a quarter squat, we're getting more quads. But if I do a full depth squat, the glutes are going to stretch more as I descend to the bottom of my squat. So doing full ranges of motion not only keeps the joints healthy and able to work through a full range of motion, you're keeping the joints lubricated, but you're also getting muscle activation at sequences that are different throughout the full, I think you call it a strength curve. But the length tension curve is relating to where the muscles are on stretch. So full range of motion can actually help you activate more total musculature than doing the partials.
Totally. And then the last thing why you need to do it is it's going to keep your nervous system peaked. It's going to keep your nervous system optimized. So we know that there's been studies that show that a weight training session has basically amped up whatever, but has accelerated and potentiated an athlete's nervous system up to 48 hours before a training session or before a competition.
Nice.
So that's, I think, the biggest reason behind that whole Michael Jordan training on game days. Like, sure, people think you can get sore and whatnot, and you're lowering your gas tank or you're depleting your reserves, but But what he did was he probably amped himself up so much and amped that nervous system. Man, no wonder he felt so good. As it was later in his career. So you really want to train again to maintain your gains and to maintain your muscle, but you also want to keep your nervous system optimized, because that's the key to explosiveness. That's the key to being able to jump as high and sprint as fast. That's the key, is your nervous system. You have to always remember, bones are stupid and muscles only do what the brain tells them to do. So so going upstream, it's really about the brain. It's really about your nervous system.
Fully agree. So a couple fun points to add on to that. If you look at the research on muscular contraction, they'll separate a muscle away from the brain and they'll contract the muscle by itself, like outside of the body. But the muscle itself is only responsible for about 80% of your maximal strength. So the other 20% of maximal strength or speed or power comes from the brain and its ability to send a more coordinated signal. So it's turning on the right muscles, not activating unused muscles. The signal speed is faster. The rate at which it recruits the motor units are faster and more efficient. And so what the big gain is for strength and speed and power athletes is you're really training the brain to be a better computer to the body. So that's one thing to really keep in consideration, especially with strength and speed. But the other thing on that is, I mentioned earlier, is exposure. So speed and power gains are the very first thing we'll lose. So if you spend a lot of time peaking and getting your performance to a certain level right before you perform, like your season, you're constantly climbing this peak of performance, and then you want to be at the top and the peak for your games. If you don't keep that speed exposure, it only takes 3 to 5 days without speed exposure to start seeing decrements in speed and power. And so it's different when you're on the court, because then you're using that, you're tired, you're fatigued, and you're fatiguing the system. But as far as the potentiation goes, being able to potentiate and activate within that 3 to 5 day period is going to be very important for maintaining the speed, strength, and the explosiveness gained in the off season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, girls get to that, I always like to say the tip off of the first game. Like that's when you should just be, that's when the peak happens, right there, training camp. But that, first game I like to look at. But yeah, I wonder how quickly 2 games in, 3 games in, 5 games in before people already have a decline and they don't necessarily see it right away.
Sure.
By the mid-season, by the All-Star break, they're like, what's going on? Like, why can't I perform, the way I want to? So there's some big whys. If you want to be an explosive athlete on the basketball court, you got to train in season. All right. So that was really the why. So now let's talk about the hows. Okay. We're going to talk about frequency, training split, volume and intensity, tempo, all kind of go a little bit deeper into the weeds here. So bear with us. It's really important. We're going to hopefully put a on this package at the end and make it, be a nice little.
Man.
So frequency, off season, my gold standard is 4 training days. I've always liked that. It's upper body Monday, Thursday, lower body Tuesday, Friday. We can condition on Wednesday and we can condition on Saturday if we want and need. And that's just, we're talking weight training sessions. And then I always like 1 day off a week where we put our feet up. For me, that's Sunday, that's family day, that's church day, that's football day. And so, so 4 days a week. Probably not happening during the season though. Some coaches will say you only need 1. I tend to like 2 and sometimes 3. And the reason why, and again, these are generalities, but if you're playing 35 minutes a game, your needs will be different than someone who's only playing 4 minutes a game or not even seeing the court. Like those guys, then those girls, they can still see significant gains and significant improvements throughout the season. And I think you should focus on getting better and improving your physical body during the season. Sure, I know you're not playing as much. And I know you might suffer a little bit in practice, maybe. But if you're a younger player, rookie, second year, maybe you're in college, maybe you're in high school, you're not playing a lot of minutes, some of or more of these things fit onto your plate. keep the training open, train more often, create more muscle damage. I'm okay with that. So we're talking more about, okay, you're playing a lot of minutes. You're actually playing a lot on the court. Do you agree with that, Sean?
I fully agree. Yeah. Off season, my favorite training splits, 2 upper days, 2 lower days. My in-season training split, my favorite's 2 days a week. Usually I'll do a heavy day and a fast day. And so my general theme when I'm training like football players, that's kind of where I do most of my training, is we'll spend the first day back. Usually it's like a Tuesday and a Thursday lift or something like that, because they'll play games on, Friday night. But I'll usually do the heavy day first to give them more time throughout the week to recover from the muscle damage and the protein damage of the heavier weights, which is good for you. It's what we want. It's kind of how it works. And then I'll do a light, faster day closer to the performance for more of that speed potentiation and more of the central nervous system recognition and like contraction speeds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like 2 days. So kind of let's go into split a little bit. So, because we're kind of in agreement with the frequency. So, and again, this is good because Sean and I, even though we agree on a lot, we still don't agree on a lot. So you're hearing different ways to do it. There's 1,000 ways to skin a cat, I like to say. There's some great coaches that believe this way or believe that way. So these are the methods that Sean and I, though, that we use. I like 2 to 3 days. I like total body days. Now, why do I like total body days? Well, one is I don't want to hammer, like say we just did upper body one day and lower body the other day. Then we start to get into, I think, too much volume for one specific muscle group. So a total body day might consist of an A series. We might do, well, we'll get into exercises in a little bit, but you're going to keep your volume a little bit lower. And how, even more specifically, I like that total body day split is your lower body. Let's say day one, your lower body is posterior chain, and your upper body exercises are all pushes. The nervous system likes posterior chain exercises paired with upper body pushes. If you look at a human from the side, we're going front side, like if someone's facing this way, front side upper body, so you got the chest and the shoulders, and then back side lower body, so we're in an X, and then back side upper body and quads lower body. Again, we're working in an X. So your day one, we're going to do posterior chain and upper body pushes. So you're going to do your deadlifts, your hamstrings, your glutes, all those types of things. And then you're going to do upper body pushes, so incline presses, chest presses, overhead presses, things like that. And then your day two, you're going to do quad dominant stuff. So your squats, your lunges, your step ups. And then you're also going to do upper body pulls. So your chin ups, your rows, your face pulls, things like that. Regarding, so there's your split. I kind of touched on volume and intensity. And Sean, I'm going to have you jump in here in a second, but I wanted to share my screen because this is where, here we go. So this is where a lot of players miss the mark. Okay, so let's go back now. Let's say it's May, it's June, and it's the beginning of the off season, and we might be in this range here, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And as we go through the off season, we're now up in the 6, 7, 8s. And then, like, Sean talked about, as we start to really peak towards training camp, towards that first season or towards that first game, we're working in strength. We're in twos, we're doing doubles, we're doing triples, we're doing, 5 and below, things like that for a lot of the bigger lifts.
Yeah.
We've really peaked our nervous system. We've really gotten stronger. We've really adapted. Why then would you go back here during the season? You shouldn't do that because you're totally, so everything left of this line, 5 and below, essentially, we're talking about the nervous system. All right, nervous system development. Sure, there's obviously some potential hypertrophy or growth that can go on, but we're really training the nervous system. We're training the connective tissue and all those things, and we want to keep that optimized because that's really what helps us to explode for the vertical jump, to explode in the sprints, to explode in our first steps. So, so where was I going with that, Sean?
You were talking about keeping volume and intensity low.
Yes. So what we want, it happens with my age sometimes. So we want to keep intensity up. Now, intensity doesn't mean gusto. Intensity doesn't mean I'm going to go balls to the wall. Intensity is basically a measurement against our 1 rep max. All right. So intensity here, we're looking at 100% intensity. Intensity here at rep 10, we're looking at 74% intensity. So when I say keep your intensity up, I mean keep it up here. All right.
Yeah.
And then our volume is going to go down. So volume is just the total amount of work that we're doing. So again, in the off season, you might do, let's say you're doing, I don't know, 5 sets of 6 to 8. All right, that's a lot of work. 40 total reps. During the season, we might do 4 sets of 4. We might do 4 sets of 3. You know what I mean? Now we're doing 12 total reps. So you shouldn't get sore, is what I'm getting at. A lot of guys don't want to get onto the court. They're going through their 2-line layups and their warm-ups of the games, and they're sore from the workout. It's because you're doing too much damn volume. Lower the volume, up the intensity, and keep it there during the season. Sean, anything to add to that?
I'm with you on that. The splits, like the lower pulls, upper pushes, I haven't really considered that. I mean, I do a lower push, upper pull days all the time, but I'll mix those up. So I'll do like lower push, pull, upper push, pull. So I'll do my 2 days instead of more focused on one's posterior chain, one's anterior chain. I'll do a day where we're getting both anterior, posterior chain on the bottom and on top. So like big push, big pull, big push, big pull. Yep. And then I'll more so split the days based on their weight. So the intensity is still super high, but the intensity changes from a weight intensity. So the intensity off your 1RM, and then an effort intensity. Because a box jump or a max effort vertical jump, in my eyes, is still a 100% intensity, because it's maximal recruitment of all your muscle fibers and the speed at which they can contract. So 1RM is a great way to dictate intensity, but I go a little further on it, and I say it's more effort based. So like a 1RM sprint, there's not a real weight to it, so it's hard to dictate what the intensity of that is. So I'll use like effort. What was the go rate almost? So like a box jump or a max effort jump will be intensity. So I'll do it that way, but I couldn't agree more with the volume. I mean, I'm 4 or 5 sets of 2, 3, 4 reps. I mean, we're sub 15 reps per exercise. So it's got to be either really heavy or really light and fast. And it's really just those 2 factors. And what Phil was saying is, if you're at 100% for your 1RM, it makes total sense that the volume and the intensity are inversely related. You can't do your 1RM 5 times. You just can't physically. And so if you're doing more weight, you have to do less reps. The big issue I usually see is when people start doing high intensity exercises that are now non-weight dependent. So jumps and bounds and sprints. Most people tend to do too much volume in those phases because they'll think 10 jumps is a great way to keep the power up, where in the literature and the research, we know that your power starts to decrease after 4, 5, or 6 reps. And so if the goal is to keep peaking and keep everything at a max effort, it would be waste of our time to be doing explosive reps, but they're not matching the same effort as your first rep. So if I'm trying to do explosive box jumps and I can jump 30 inches in a row 4 times, but then I start jumping 28 inches, 26 inches, I'm no longer optimizing my jump. And so those lower height jumps are now just wasted effort because I'm no longer peaking at where I need to be. So definitely keep the volume low, guys. If you're doing in-season training, like no more than 5 for like anything almost is a rule of thumb. And depending on how sore you are, how you're feeling, it could even be 2 and 3s. So 5 sets of 2, 5 sets of 3, 4 sets of 2, 4 sets of 3s, 4 sets of 4. So it's going to feel like it's not enough work, but that's kind of the goal. It's meant to keep what you've earned in the off season. You put in the work and then you keep the work. So it's kind of a backwards thought, but I'm with you on the volume. I'm with you on the intensity.
Yeah. So let's talk about tempo then. So I'm a big proponent of tempo. And if we look at, again, where this relative strength is, the optimal time under tension in total seconds is between 0 and 20. Sean, we talked about this before I left town. I think you're the one that found this chart before I even saw it. So if you think about, let's say we're doing 3 reps and we're doing 3 reps in a deadlift, most people will go up, down, up, down, up, down. They're done. Okay. And the set might last 5 seconds. That's not incorrect per se, but we can take up to 20 seconds and we know that we're still in this relative strength phase. So if I were in the off season with a client, I might do 3 reps at a 4-0x0 tempo or a 4-1x0 tempo. And that means, let's say 4-0x0, that's 5 seconds. 5 seconds times 3 reps, we're looking at 15 seconds. During the season, because we are getting a little closer to that limit of 20 seconds, I'm going to lower my tempos a little bit. For the most part, for most athletes, I might do a 3-0x0. I might do a 2-1x0. You know what I mean? Because, and Sean has referenced some literature already. We know that a faster eccentric means a faster concentric. So if we're in season, I might let you lower for 2 seconds. Okay, so instead of just dropping fast, it's 2, 1, pause, fast, 2, 1, and up. So I'm maybe not the pause, but point being, tempo and time under tension is going to also drop down during the season.
So I have some good points when you're done on that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, this is just something you noted earlier, that you and I have a little bit different style training philosophies.
Yeah.
Which is beautiful because you're a highly successful coach, and I feel like I've done a couple good things too. But personally, the way I tackle in-season training is I cut out all the eccentrics. Yeah. So I don't do negative reps during season unless it's maybe like a C series and it's an off day, or we're earlier through the week and I'm going like the more full range of motion stuff. But I actually have some protocols that I'll use, like the quarter reps. I'll do something called a drop catch, where you literally flop the eccentric and catch at the bottom and pull. So almost completely eliminating an eccentric, because it turns it into a reactive exercise. So just a couple differences in how we operate, but I tend to focus on more of the stretch shortening cycle. I focus more on the isometric strength for tendon stiffness. And then I focus more on the reactivity of the concentric, or the muscle shortening is my primary focus. So depth drops, drop jumps, dropping weight, catching and pulling, like drop catch benches where I'm in the eccentric for minimal. It's drop catch and I'll push. So I actually catch it from falling. So I almost eliminate the eccentric. So different kind of stylistic play, but it's more focused on the outwards force output than it is absorbing the force in. And my reason for that, my why for that, is the eccentric is the damaging side of the muscle contraction. So as we lengthen, as the contraction lengthens, muscles kind of shorten and lengthen. The cross bridge attachments are being ripped apart on a negative, and there tends to be a little bit more soreness, especially for someone who's not used to eccentrics. So I think Phil does a really good job with all his clients building very high tolerances for eccentrics, like he mentioned, 5-second negatives. So if you have that tolerance and then you go down to a 2 or a 3 second negative, the damage is very different from someone who doesn't have the tolerance, and then they start adding eccentrics into the workout. You'll be like, wow, I'm so sore from a negative. So I tend to see, if you don't have that negative tolerance, I wouldn't add it in unless you've built the eccentric, the negative eccentric. I'm using the same way. If you haven't built that into the preseason or off season, you might find yourself being really sore through that negative lengthening contraction. So as a general rule of thumb, I tend to take that out as we progress from off season, preseason, and in season, where my further away sets and reps are more eccentric negative. During the preseason, I'm more focused on isometrics, where I'm holding a position. Now I'm strengthening the connective tissue. And then as we get closer to season, I focus on the explosive force output on more of the concentric. So it's a triphasic, like a V. I go eccentric, isometric, and then concentric coming out. So I tend to focus on each muscle contraction phase through the phases of training.
Right.
But it's just different techniques. But I think it's good to have a concept of both.
Yeah. And you're right. That's a good point. If someone's watching this video and they've never used time under tension, or they realize that they're using time under tension, and they go from I'm not doing any type of eccentric timing I'm going to do a 3-second. Yeah, that'll probably wreck you a little bit. Someone like me who I just, my B series at the gym today, I had back squats, 5 sets of 4 to 6 at a 5.0 XO tempo. Well, shit, going to 2, I'm like pumping my fist.
Yes.
Awesome. You know what I mean? My weights will go up, but like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That's a hell of a long time to maintain, integrity, and everything's tight and maintain tension. And so long story short, the way Sean does it, he does it one way. I wouldn't add these, I'd slowly work in and see how you feel, you know what I mean? But for me, definitely, I'm keeping eccentrics in not only, but for one big reason is I think it's necessary to maintain eccentric strength. I also think it's necessary to control weight. And I think athletes need to deserve the right to move quickly. And, a lot of athletes, one off season probably isn't enough time to get the experience and get that, body control and awareness to be able to, like you're talking about, dropping and driving.
Yeah, that's a more advanced technique for sure.
Yeah, maybe some are, but if someone's been with me 2, 3, 4 off seasons, yeah, maybe we start bringing in some nice quick stuff like that. But that's a good segue into exercises. What exercises do we use? Because we're up in the intensity, we're keeping the intensity up, we're dropping the volume. So your exercises should be a lot shorter. All right, you shouldn't be spending an hour, 2 hours in the gym. No, we're talking 45 minutes, 50 minutes in and out. Yeah. You're not sitting there doing bicep curls. Okay, these aren't getting you championship rings. These aren't getting you 20 points per game and getting you signed to a bigger deal. So we need to do big, I call them bang for your buck. Okay, you put $1 down at the store, you want that dollar to go as far as you can. We want the biggest bang for our buck. Okay, and so those are your big multi-joint movements, multi-planar movements. We're talking deadlifts, we're talking squats, we're talking rows and presses and lunges, movements that are using multiple muscle groups, using multiple joints. They're gonna tax the system and not just a single specific area of the body. And these are the things that I like to generate, or that I like to go to. Focus on those, on maintaining strength throughout total body, awareness, coordination between the muscle groups, between upper and lower halves, between anterior and posterior chains, and making the biggest, most effective use of your time in the weight room. You mentioned, a lot of, explosiveness, blah, blah, blah. I'm depending on the person, depending on the amount of work minutes they're playing on the court. I'm okay with some jumps here and there, but for the most part in my brain, most of these athletes, if you're playing some serious minutes, you're getting up and down the court enough. We know that you're going to change direction about 1,000 times in a basketball game. We know that you're going to jump 100 times or so in a basketball game. So that's a lot of jumping, especially the eccentric. So getting up off the floor and then coming back down and landing.
Yeah, totally agree.
So if you do some jumps, I don't mind that. Say you go in the gym and your A1 exercise, your first exercise of the day is a squat, and then you immediately follow it with some hurdle jumps or some box jumps. Always step down, don't jump down. Always don't take on any more damage than you need to into your joint.
Fully agree. Yeah, fully agree. So to that point, the reason I kind of eliminate the eccentric loading in season is for the same idea. You take a lot of damage in the eccentric. So if you, like what Phil's saying, you might not need a lot of jumps if you're a basketball player. I coach mostly football, so they don't do as many jumps and they do more sprints and takeoffs. So, but if you are going to do box jumps, or if you are going to do any sort of jumping, I like a box jump because the box jump eliminates the eccentric landing forces. You jump and you land at the height of your jump, so you don't have to travel to the ground and absorb that force. So we're trying to peak and we're trying to maximize efficiency with minimal muscle damage. So we're basically turning on the system. We're ramping you up. We're doing a pre-game or a day of lift or a pre-day lift, but we're trying to turn you on. And if you get a lot of eccentrics, if you get a lot of heavy loads too close to your performance, you're going to have that protein degradation, muscle soreness. So if you are doing jumps, land on a box. For me, the exercise selection I try and find, couldn't agree more with Phil. You definitely want to keep the big compound movements, multi-joint movements. I try and do more fast and smart movements. So Phil mentioned earlier, bones are dumb. They only do what the brain tells them. But I think of like complex movements first. I love the Olympic lifts and any Olympic variant. So dumbbell cleans or dumbbell snatches, doing landmine versions with a bar jammed into the ground, so you have a single arm. I usually end up finding myself doing a little bit more unilateral work. So it's a bit more specific to like running patterns and cross body patterns. And then I try and mimic the shapes of the game. And so this is where in the A series is where I'll do partial reps or to optimize our jumping and say, make sure we're jumping out of the right power position, or I'm stepping with the right amount of force and torque. So my in-season training is very specific to the joint angles. It's very specific to the movement speeds, and very specific to lower the total damage from the session. So we're keeping the volume really low, keeping the intensity high. So that's kind of my in-season strategy. So a lot of like step ups, single leg box jumps, a lot of like split squats, like quarter split squats, quarter squats, rhythm squats. Yeah. But definitely make sure you're getting your big compound movements, multi-joint, big pushes, big pulls, big presses, and then like full body speed stuff, explosive stuff. So I like the Olympic stuff because you got like hex bar jumps, or quarter squat jumps, something like that would be in my wheelhouse.
Yeah. Cool. And then the last specific I wanted to touch was the rest interval. And
long.
Yeah. Long. So a lot of people, well, bodybuilders, it's all about density. It's about packing in a lot of work in a little amount of time. And a lot of you basketball players, your type A's, your go-getters, settle down, okay? Work extremely hard during your set. Take plenty of rest though, okay? We're not trying to, your competition, your games are the most important thing. Second most important probably is practice. Okay, training is then next. Now, training is very important. It'll keep you explosive and stronger in the season, but don't, if you need an extra 30 seconds, if you need an extra minute, take it. Because again, we're working in the higher intensities. So I guess I could share one more time. So if we're working in the higher intensities here, optimal rest time in this range is 3 minutes to 5 minutes. It's 180 seconds to 3 seconds. So don't think for a minute, if you're doing 5 sets of 3 reps on the back squat, that you're going to be ready to go after a minute or two.
No.
And to that, what Sean talks about, so a true 3 rep max, a true triple will be at 90%. I'm okay with you during the season. I'm okay with you leaving a rep on the table. I call that a -1 rep. So if you get to 3 and you're like, I think I could do one more, that means you're probably working at about an 88%. We're still pretty dang close to that 90%. I'm okay with you not getting all the way to total failure, because we know that when you go to total failure, even when you're up here, that's really when that, and there's a couple different types of muscle hypertrophy, but that's really when the breakdown can happen. And that's fine if you're trying to grow. But during the season, we're trying to maintain our strength. Okay. So getting back to the time, take your time between sets. Again, you're not doing 12 sets of legs. Okay, you're going to do 5 sets of squats and then maybe 3 or 4 sets of a good morning or a back extension or a hamstring curl. You know what I mean? Your sets are coming way down. Your time under tension is coming way down. But make sure you keep your rest intervals there.
And to add to that point, fully agree. It's probably the biggest mistake I see in training, just at all across the board, in season, out of season, postseason. Anytime anyone's trying to do anything speed, power, or strength related, those 3, in my opinion, are the high central nervous system, high processing outputs. 2 to 5 minimum rest, guys, minimum rest. So if you want to do, your explosive or heavy squat, and you're reeling for something, go do another, like an upper body stretch. Maybe if you're doing a lower body strength day, do like a chest stretch. So I find that I'll work in like a dynamic mobility or a balance or some sort of hand-eye coordination or something to get your brain off the fact that you're letting your body rest. So a lot of guys just feel like they're wasting their time. So don't waste your time. You can do something different, like hand-eye stuff or very, very low output stress stuff. But it's not we're resting because we think you're tired. You could do 2 reps, not be winded, but the energy system in your body might not have fully recycled the energy necessary for your next set. There's metabolites and there's waste products from muscle contraction that get stuck in your bloodstream. So we need time for the bloodstream to grab that stuff, take it out of the muscle, and keep your muscles fresh for your next set. Like I mentioned earlier, we want to make sure we're doing each rep at a max capacity to make sure we're optimized and turn on for your game or preseason. So if you're doing too many reps or you're doing reps before you're well rested, and we'll take that 30-inch jump. If you have a jump mat or something and you're trying to jump and you're landing on your mat and you're making sure you're getting a max effort, if you didn't rest long enough and you're seeing your jumps are at 26, 27 inches, you're not helping yourself by continuing your set at a sub-maximal level. Yeah. So the rest is going to be super important to make sure that everything is max effort. Effort's the goal.
And the nervous system takes 5 to 6 times longer to regenerate than the musculoskeletal system. So your muscles will feel fine. Like he said, you might do 2 or 3 reps and be like, dang, I can go again here in 30 seconds. Your nervous system isn't going to let that happen. Your nervous system takes a long time to regenerate. So take that time. Like he said, 2 to 5 minutes, 3 to 5 minutes, take 6 minutes if you need, if it's really taxing, if it's a heavy deadlift or whatnot. Totally. So any last words, my man?
Effort should be prioritized and rest breaks should be prioritized. So that's your in-season training. Big stuff, high effort, high rest.
Yep. Yeah, that's a perfect summation. Big effort. What'd you say? Say it again.
Big stuff. So the big muscle movements, high effort and high rest. So big stuff, high effort, high rest.
Good. Love it. Big movements, high effort, high rest. If you guys have any questions, please comment below. We'd love to answer those things. I'd be happy to continue the conversation. But until next week, Sean and I are signing out. Go be heavy, go be strong, go be fast.
Go vote. Go vote if you're in America.
Yeah, you're in the States. We'll see you.
Later, guys.